Hey everybody, welcome back to Matt's Garage DIY. Today we're going to look at repairing a hardwood floor. Whether you just need to replace a board or in my case, have to kind of fill in a whole section where I removed a wall. This technique will work for both. So let's get started. We're going to be patching in some hardwood flooring. Ripped out a little room that I had here. And now need to fill in the floor. So when replacing your floor or doing any kind of patching, you want to avoid an obvious pattern like this. Before you start, you want to make sure you give this a really good vacuum, get any kind of dirt and debris out of there. Even small pieces will get stuck in the tongue and groove of the wood and cause you to not get a nice tight fit with those pieces. Whether you have some existing flooring left over or have to buy some new stuff, make sure that you bring it into the room that you're going to be working in probably up to a week ahead of time. Open up those boxes, spread the pieces out, make sure there's lots of airflow around the pieces. This is my stack of hardwood. I've put it all face down, as well as with plenty of space in between for the air to flow. We've seen in some cases where hardwood that's been stored in the basement has swollen up to 1/8 of an inch in width, just from the moisture that it collects there. So you want to get this out of the basement and into whatever room you're going to be working in up to a week ahead of time. First thing that we're going to have to do is cut out some pieces, like I said, because we don't want that sort of very obvious sawtooth pattern. So I'm just going to mark the pieces with some masking tape that we're going to cut out, and then I'll show you how we're going to do that. So as you can see, I've kind of marked the ends of some boards that naturally end close to where we're going to be replacing. But over on the left-hand side, we don't have any joints that are close. So we're just going to kind of develop or make a random pattern, and I'll show you how we're going to cut out partial boards. All right, so we've kind of marked off our random pieces. Now I'm just going to start scoring some straight lines. Not all of these end at natural joints, so we're going to just score some lines across the pieces that we're going to cut. So I've just used this kind of oscillating saw to cut the boards. So these are ones where we don't have natural joints. So just use a straight edge with that saw to cut those. And now we're going to use a skill saw, kind of make some longer cuts so we can start tearing those pieces out. Nothing pretty about this part. You just, after you have your nice cuts on the ends, you go to work. Okay, we have one part row as well. So we're just using a hammer and a chisel to... We're just using a hammer and chisel to knock those pieces off. Okay, so here we go. 2 hours later, we basically have all the pieces cut out where we want them. So this is where we're starting, where you obviously don't have pieces that are going to exactly fit what we're doing. So you put your piece in there, mark it to the correct length, and then we'll chop it off. Okay, we've got our piece cut to size so it fits in there nicely. Next thing we need to do is just sort of do a little bit of 180 grit sandpaper, bevel those edges, both ends, kind of to duplicate or replicate the factory finish. Wipe that off, put a little bit of varnish on both ends, and that's going to look like a factory piece. We'll put a little bit of PL 400 under there. You can use any of the PL products, they work pretty good. Then we'll drop our piece in. All right, so we are going to use a finishing nailer, put a couple little nails in right kind of in the crack of that groove to hold this down. Because this is our starting row here, once we have a couple rows in and it's nice and solid, then we'll just work to pull those back so we tighten up this gap right across there. There you go, so you can see right in there, right there. I've just used my little trim nailer, finishing nailer. I'm using 2-inch nails because that's what I have, but you don't need something quite that long. Okay, so we've got our next piece ready to go. As you can see, this piece obviously won't quite drop in. We have a tongue there. So we're just going to trim off that tongue so that this piece can kind of tip in, sort of dig into the tongue on the back, and then we're not going to have to worry about tipping that piece in. That'll just be cut out of the way for the last inch or so. All right, so you can see we've just kind of cut that tongue off. That should fold down quite nicely. We're going to put a bit of PL under and on to the next piece. Nice snug fit. Just use a scrap of the hardwood just so you're not damaging the edge of the wood. And a rubber mallet. Should be able to tap that in, tighten up those gaps. There we go. Kind of work that back and forth. All right, so here we are. There's our final piece. So I have the piece cut, and I've run it through my table saw. Put a bevel on the one edge. Just makes it a little easier to get in there without damaging the last piece. This is basically going to be a friction fit. Ideally, you're going to put this in with no nails, just some PL glue on the bottom. I used about a 22-degree angle as I ran that piece through my table saw. And yeah, you just don't want to wreck that top edge. Took me a couple tries to get it right, but this piece should do it. All right, last piece going in. Done. Okay, so here we go. There's the final finished product. Pretty happy with that. That took us about 5.5 hours to get that done, with two of us working pretty much the whole time. A couple little spots that we touched up with a hardwood kind of filler pencil. Some of the joints were a little bigger than we wanted, but overall really pleased with the way that has turned out. There you go. That's how it's done.